I've been asked to speak on positioning, and positioning is one of the probably the most talked about topic that we have among speakers. How do I position myself? How do I place myself in the right position to get those opportunities, to be able to be seen? And we've spoken a lot about all the different ideas and the concepts about marketing and how to prepare and where we're going and stuff. So I want to push this a little bit and say, well, how do we find that perfect positioning for professionals? And professionals, we're going to be speaking about speakers, and specifically on the Africa continent, because everybody that we speak to, East Africa, West Africa, and Southern Africa, the various groups that we manage, are looking at different ways of placing. We're all wanting that big paycheck. We all want the $5,000 keynote. And I think that is, we all kind of dream, well, I've got more chances of winning the lotto than I have of scoring that workshop. Well, maybe in the next half an hour, we can unpack that and looking a little bit about that. So let's kind of go down this road. What is the perfect positioning for professional speakers? I want to just pause here a little bit, because I've recently, literally 3 days ago, we came into some really interesting research. So we've been able to contract a company that has gone out and done some research for us. Now, this research, I could be very, very selfish because we paid dearly for it. But I want to share two little aspects about what the report came back with. The first one was, well, we went out and we asked the question, how do you usually go about sourcing keynote speakers? Now, this was asked of 30 organizers of events. These are event organizers that are organizing big corporate events and larger kind of association events where they go out and regularly look for speakers. And out of the 30, these are the results that they've shared. Is that mostly it's networking groups, social media, direct referrals, and Google searches. Now, 30 out of 30 are going in to Google to search for the speakers that they're wanting to speak. That's assuming that they don't have direct referrals, because often an event organizer will be told, well, we're having this event and I want Bruce Wade to open up with his keynote. Then there's no matter. Then they've just got to find me and contract me. But if they go, well, we're having this event and we need speakers, and that's mostly the case. So 30 out of 30 people going into Google to type in something. And this is the interesting part. What are they typing in? Well, let me share that with you on the next slide. These are some of the common search terms that they are using to search for speakers. Now, this is gold, because this is not me making up stats to add to my blueprint. This is not me creating stuff to, this is coming from the people who book us, who get, who contract us so we can get paid. So here are some of the search terms: high energy speakers, motivational speakers, global speakers, top international speakers, top motivational speakers, leadership speakers, global thought leaders. So here's a little exercise later on this afternoon, not during my talk, maybe during the next person's talk. You can go off and Google these terms and see where your name comes up. If it doesn't come up in the first 2 pages, I am sorry for you and me that we are not going to be found by these 30 people who book international speakers and are never, ever, ever going to get that phone call to say, here is the next $5,000 keynote opportunity. So How do we position ourselves so we get that? Well, let's go down the road and unpack some of these things. So don't worry about these terms. Okay, we're going to give you something to look at a bit later. So if you're frantically writing those down, that's great. Do not go into Google and search, because you'll find all sorts of other people that then you're going to hate because they are on page number 1. And we're going to do this. If you do come up with some of these following things, then it'll help improve. So how do we position yourself? Well, we have a term. You can choose. Do you want to become a professional speaker or a speaking professional? What's the difference? Well, it's word order, isn't it? But it's very interesting. I was speaking to my doctor the other day. Funny enough, I was sitting there in his waiting room and he kind of asked me, so what do you do? And I go, well, I'm a speaker. And he goes, that's amazing. I've been asked to speak. What sort of stuff? So he spent 20 minutes of my money time in his waiting room coaching him on how he should become a speaking professional. So he's a qualified doctor. He's well known in emergency medicine. He's well known in surgery. He's a GP, and he's very well known in the industry. And they've asked him to come and speak into corporates on stress management. Now, he is not a professional speaker by any terms. Okay. He is a speaking professional. So we're going to kind of split those into two, and we're going to go, well, here's some things and here's something else there. But this is one of the separations, is that people get confused. A speaking professional is a professional person who can speak on their profession. A professional speaker is someone who speaks on a number of topics and is professional at the speaking. All right, you've got those two. So those are two things. So kind of, write down 2 columns about this is what I am and this is what I'm not. Don't worry about the stuff that you're not. I want you to focus on the stuff that you are, because we're going to build a little mini profile for you as we go through this speech. So first one, are you a professional speaker or are you a speaking professional? There we go. Play around with that. Okay, let's go down there. So there's 4 different categories that you can fall into in the next layer. Is that you can become a subject expert. Now, what is a subject expert? Well, it's an expert on a certain subject. You don't necessarily need to have an academic qualification, a master's degree in it. You could just become a subject expert in making pancakes. All right. Don't know if you're going to get many speaking slots, but that is where you are. If you are in a world authority on a certain subject, or an Africa authority or a country authority, or the only person in your village or town that can do this stuff, you are the subject expert. Now, subject expert is often self-proclaimed. All right. Often people sit there and say, I am the subject expert in X, Y, and Z because I've done this and I've done this and done this. So you can choose whether you're a subject expert or you are not. So put that in your yes or no column as you are looking around. If you think you are a subject expert, awesome. If you're going like, oh, I watched a YouTube video and I saw that Netflix series and I kind of sort of think I know something about EQ or, stress management or diversity or resilience or any of these things, then we can then put yourself in there. If you are kind of a qualified lawyer and you've got a law degree and you kind of do home affairs stuff, then you can make yourself a subject expert. All right, so the second one that we've got to look at, and this is a little interesting there, is become a thought leader. Well, this is often seen as a little bit of an insult, because a lot of people who are thought leaders don't like to become known as thought leaders, and the people who are not thought leaders aspire to be thought leaders. So it's one of those little sort of claim to fames there. But what is a thought? Well, let's just unpack what a thought leader is. It's somebody who has thoughts, okay, clearly, but not just random thoughts, not just individual thoughts, not just copycat thoughts. And I wrote a really interesting blog article this week based on a meme that I saw and the information that's sort of come out of the Olympics. And it says, be a voice, not just an echo. Now, if you are an echo, you are not ever going to be a thought leader, because all you're doing is regurgitating stuff that other people have said, or you are copycatting other people's stuff. So if you read somebody else's book, if I read Charlotte's book on futurism, it does not make me a thought leader on futurism. Okay, it makes me a copycat because I can quote, I can show diagrams, I can, pull out a compass and pretend I'm some form of future guy. No, I'm not. I'm a copycat. Also, if you are using AI, just as a refer back to our session last night, if you are using AI to come up with new ideas and new thoughts, you are not a thought leader. You are a regurgitator of AI's information. If you are using AI to add to your thoughts, to maximize your clever, innovative ideas, if you are creating new things, if you're creating ideas and concepts and blueprints and methodologies and coming up with some things that nobody else has thought of in a specific area, then, ladies and gentlemen, you are a thought leader. If others come to you and say, what do you think about this subject, because we value what you have to say, then you are a thought leader. So classify yourself. I am a thought leader. I am not a thought leader. Are you just copycatting somebody else, or have you had an original thought? All right. And I'm quite harsh about this, but I want you to be honest with yourself, because we can say, yes, 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 I am. And we're just fooling ourselves, because you are still not going to be selected as a speaker of note. So let's go to the third category and let's unpack that one a little bit. So this then says, I am a sector authority. Okay. Now this is an interesting one, because a sector authority is not something you can self-proclaim. Because now we're moving a little bit away about other stuff, is I cannot say I am an authority. The term authority is bestowed on you by a sector. So this means that you have done your credibility, you have earned your stripes, as they call it, in a certain area, and you become a sector authority. Now, we have a couple of speakers who are sector authorities in economics and political commentary and, all these different things. We've got a sector authority in AI and technology. Arthur is a great, if you want to know anything about AI from the sector authority, go to Arthur Goldsack. He's written the book. He's the sector authority. He's probably the guy in South Africa who knows the most about the up-to-date AI as of this morning, because that's his job. He is the sector authority of that. If you want to know what's happening in tourism or Africa politics or Africa economics, there are certain people that you go to that come to mind to say, he is that person, or she is that woman that we need to go to, because they then have that authority bestowed on them by us, the humble ignorant, that then needs their input into that. So if you've ever been asked to come and speak because they see you as an authority on a certain subject, then that is awesome. It doesn't matter what the subject is. I was speaking to the guys in the Southern Africa Concrete Association. I kid you not, there is such an association. And they have a sector authority. He's the guy who will tell you exactly everything there is to know about mixing and setting and building with concrete. He's the guy that's going to tell you with it. So if you're building something underwater with concrete, or a tall building on the side of a mountain with concrete, he's the guy to go to. So sector authority is something that you may be or may not be. Click and write in the different boxes that you need to do. The fourth category then is the academic. And by way of academic, if you have honors, masters, professor, doctorate, any of those sort of things behind your name, and you are involved in academia, which means you are involved in teaching, research, or scribing various academic papers and letters and newsletters, then I would classify yourself as an academic. You don't necessarily, are you going to say, no, never mind. I withdraw that statement. Academics are a special breed of people, and they normally reside in little rooms with thick doors and are involved in a lot of research and writing. They play a vital role in our kind of world today, because they're the guys, researching and pushing the envelopes in a number of sort of sectors, and they are absolutely brilliant. Not everybody in academia is an academic, but academics are mostly found in academia. There are a couple of people that move out of that and are then consultants. You get quite a lot of those guys in the USA, where they finished with actually teaching, and they might have got tenure and they moved on, and now they consult, but they're consulting as an academic into corporates, into local government, national government, and various things. So those are our four little sectors. So we put them together, we can kind of do that with them. So we've got a thought leader, subject expert, sector authority, and academic. So if you had to draw one of those little kind of spider diagram thingamajigs there and give yourself a score out of 10 out of each of those, what would that look like for you? This is where you're positioning yourself. This is where you're going, and this is how it's going to be unpacked. So you can draw a little kind of oblique circle in there, and that'll tell you exactly kind of where you are positioned. If you're kind of in the middle and you go, that's me, well, you're lying to yourself. So stop it. Do something different. Be who you are. Find out where you are. If you're sitting here and you're going like, goeie genade, that's Afrikaans for wow, then I have no idea where I am, then that's okay, because now you've got something to aspire to. I think the easiest ways to get into one of those four circles is to become a subject expert and do lots and lots and lots and lots of reading and research, and start thinking thinks and thoughts that no one else is thinking, and become a thought leader. And then you can slowly move down to the lower part with become a sector authority or the academic. Or you can start at academia and go spend the next 10 years at university, get a PhD plus another degree, and you can play around in those areas. So if you're a doctor, professor of something, then you belong in the lower left-hand corner. All right, so let's move on. You've graded yourself there, but now there's a couple of activities that we need to play with and get going. So what are those? Well, here we go. So we've got 4 different kind of fruits, the output of that we would see. And they're going to tie in. You'll see how they tie in quite nicely. So firstly is experience. Now, to be a little aggressive to Africa speakers is most of the Africa speakers that we've come across, and there have been many people that I've worked with, and through Voices into Africa and the Red Jacket and stuff, people find themselves very thin on experience. It's very fast, a very quick education. So I've done a 6-month course in coaching, and therefore I'm an executive coach. Or I've read a book, or I've done a short thing, or I've done a Udemy course on this, therefore I think I am sort of doing this. Or I went away for a weekend and I learned this new technique, and therefore on Monday morning I'm going to push myself into that. So there's a term in Africa that we call an inch deep and a mile wide. And unfortunately, a lot of speakers try get onto the professional speaking market by having a very wide, broad case of experience, but a very narrow, very shallow experience in there, a mile wide and an inch deep. What we're talking about experience, we're actually wanting an inch wide, and a mile deep. That is true experience. If you can say, honestly, I've spent the last 30 years delving into the sector, or I've spent the last 20 years doing research into this or working in the sector, or I've spent 10 years in corporate and 10 years out of corporate doing these things, that counts as experience. So you can give yourself a score 1 to 10 on experience out of there. Be honest with yourself. Like 3 years, a weekend does not make an experience. The problem with experience is it takes time. You cannot rush experience. You can read really fast to get through a novel, but it doesn't make you an experienced novelist, okay? To write a book takes time. To get 10 years experience does not take 5 years. It takes, 10 years. Okay, Malcolm Gladwell's theory on 10,000 hours is about 10 years experience. And it takes 10,000 hours to get 10,000 hours. You can't say, you know, if I move really, really, really fast during those 10,000, I can cut it down to 5,000 hours. It doesn't work that way. You've got to do the time to get the experience. With that, the second thing, give you a score about achievements. Well, what are achievements? Achievements are certain milestones that you could have achieved. You could have become, you know, head of department. You could have become a CEO. You could have gone up certain levels within a corporate environment. And that's worthy of noting. Yeah, a lot of people spend years and years in their corporate and they never make it past middle management. There's not much achievement as far as career growth and running an organization if you're still in middle management. You might be really good at the area that you're sort of working in, but it doesn't necessarily give you those achievements. You could have been nominated and won for a number of prizes, a number of awards, and there are many, many awards that are open and available for speakers. CSP is one of them. All right. Are you aspiring to become a certified speaking professional? Well, you didn't know about that, but CSP after your name, and no, I do not have one. And it's a massive task. It's almost like a doctorate in speaking, a CSP. And the people who get it have worked very, very hard over 5 years to be able to achieve that. That's an achievement. There are a number of other online qualifications and coaching qualifications and speaking qualifications. And if you've been through Toastmasters, you can become a DTM and you can put that after your name. That's an achievement. How many achievements have you got? How many do you still want to get? And where do you grade yourself on the achievement block? Give yourself a score, 1 to 10. Honestly, in your own area, see how that goes, look at what that looks like. The next one is credentials. Well, this is an interesting one because we were speaking about this in a mastermind the other day, and people say, well, what are credentials? Well, credentials are kind of your licenses to perform. Okay, it could be academic achievements. All right, I've got a credential. I've got a BA, a BCom, a BSc. I've got a honors. I've got a master's. I've got a doctorate. Those are all credentials. All right, I am a certified this. I've done a course and I'm certified in this. I've done this. I've done this and done this. Now, some credentials count, some do not. Funnily enough, I've got a license to drive oil tankers. Yeah, it doesn't do much to get me on the stage to speak to people other than a fun fact about Bruce. I can sew human flesh and drive an oil tanker, but it doesn't make me a good speaker. So there's a whole bunch of credentials that we might have that might disqualify us, but also qualify for you. If those credentials are in line with the topic and the sector that you are wanting to speak into, then you can give yourself a big tick because that gives you the ability, the credentials, the chutzpah to be able to stand there and say, I have this document, therefore I can do that. You will never find me in an area speaking to a bunch of legal fraternal, people about law because I am not qualified to do that. I'm not going to go speak to a group of accountants. unless I go speak on innovation in accounting or innovation in law or strategy about building a law practice. I could do that, but do not put me in a place. And I turn down quite a lot of speaking engagements and workshop engagements because I do not have the credentials, and I'd far prefer to pass those on to somebody else who is better qualified with the greater credentials. So mark yourself 1 to 10. How good are your credentials in the sector that you are wanting to focus in on? The last one there is published. Well, how many of you have got a book that's published? All right, self-published, I do not really care whether it's properly published or self-published, or even a ebook that you've written in Word that is more than 10,000 words and you made a PDF of it. That is a good start, because the person who crosses the line with a book is better than the person who just stands there and goes, I read somebody else's book. If you can sit there and do this. So one of the little things that I've got, just to kind of brag, is I've created, and I just want to bring it up here. I've created a book of books. All right. Why? Because I can. So what I did is I took all the covers of all the books that I've been involved in and written and co-written, and I put them into a book of books. So when I go for an interview or a job requirement and stuff, I throw this little thing into my briefcase, and the people say, so what credentials have you got? What gives you the right? And say, well, I've written a couple of books on various subjects, and these are all the topics that are on there. And I slide my book of books across the table, and I'm going, well, I think that qualifies me to speak on things like innovation and business and speaking coaching, etc., because I'm able to select 4 or 5 books on this, and I can do 5 or 6 books on that, and 7 and 8 books on that. And I'm able to say that because I've written the book, because I've done the research, because I've done the work based on my experience, it then gives me the credibility to be able to push that forward into where we go. So give your score on 1 out of 10. If you give yourself 1 point for every 3 books you've written, give yourself a score between 0 and 10 and push yourself into that market. So that should give you a bit of a score on how well positioned you are as a professional speaker. Hopefully I'm not making yourself all a little bit inadequate here, but this is the reality of where we go. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a scorecard. Well, if we had a positioning target and we had to aim for that microphone in the middle and go like, that's where I want to belong, well, what does it look like? Now, those of you who know me is that I'm one of my natural superhero talents is, of course, blueprinting. So could we take all that information that I've shared with you over 20 minutes and put it into a blueprint? Well, of course I can. And there we go, the professional speaker's blueprint. And we're going to put it out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, this is where you pull out your camera, because I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to take a picture of the next slide as I put it up. But do not worry if you do not have a camera. I'm going to put a PDF into the chat as soon as I'm finished on this. But here is, ladies and gentlemen, the blueprint of professional positioning for speakers. You have a chance to take a quick snapshot of that, a screen print, do that. But don't worry about it. I will put a downloadable 1 page into that. And what that does is it positions yourself into there. See, at the top, we got professional speaker. At the bottom, speaking professional, which links to academia and social sector authority. We got thought leader and subject expert in the middle. And then between each circle, we've got the experience that's required to become a thought leader and a subject expert, and the achievements to become a subject expert and an authority, and the published that's required for thought leader and academic, and the credentials at the bottom with that, all aiming to pull yourself into the middle as a well-rounded, well-positioned expert, authority person to be sought after on stages and places around where we're going to go. And I'm going to leave it there because I've got a few minutes to take one or two questions, and I don't want to put any pressure on our MC, who's already looking at her wrist saying, oh my goodness, how am I going to fit this afternoon in before 5 o'clock? Can I get everything done? So I will give you a little bit of grace, Madam MC, and be able to finish up there. Positioning is important. If you're not well positioned, you are just a bottom shelf produce that everybody just walks past. Positioning gives you the authority and the visibility for others. So when they Google you, they will find you on page 1, 2, or maybe even page 3 for your sector. I will leave that to you each to evaluate your score and reposition yourself over the next couple of days. Thank you very much. Umbo.